How are you doing, everybody? This is Jonathan, your fitness business management expert, and in this video I'm going to go over the National Strength and Conditioning Association Certified Personal Trainer Certification, or NSCA-CPT Cert for short. Now, before I go into anything, you can believe and trust that any certification that I give a full review on is a certification that I have studied for, read through, sat for, taken the exam for, and passed. So, I am a NSCA-CPT certified trainer, and then I can give you the best advice that I can based on my personal experience. So, let's talk about a couple of things on the certification itself. Now, the common thought is that the NSCA certification is only meant for athletes. That's not necessarily the case. I think it will better prepare you to train a broader range of people than most other certs. I'm going to try to keep other certs names out of this review. But it's not just for athletes. The one thing that you have to understand is that the NSCA offers certifications for a number of different things. They offer the CPT, which I have, which is a certified personal trainer. They offer the CSCS, which is a certified strength and conditioning coach. That's something that's going to be for athletes if you're looking to train like college football teams and sports teams and things like that. They have special populations if you're looking to train, the elderly, the pregnant, and minors. They have like a tactical certification for firefighters, policemen, and that area, military. But for those of you that are looking to become certified personal trainers, the NSCA is not a bad exam to have. Now, while trying to keep other certifications out of this review, I will say that the NSCA cert is very, very broad. And a lot of people are scared to take the NSCA exam because they say that it is harder. And I will tell you that I think it is a little bit harder than the ACE exam, for instance. But the one thing that you have to understand when you take these exams is that these exams, you're not trying to not fail. All right, the people that write this book are creating this this certification to make you a better trainer, and it's geared for you to pass. All right, and it's geared for you to be successful as a trainer. So if you, when you start to open this book, look at it as this is supposed to be a tool for me to become a better trainer, so that anybody that walks in the door can be served well, then it makes it a lot easier to read through this book. Now, let's talk about the study material, the cost, and what I invested versus what you might want to invest. Now, I actually got a great piece of advice from Robert Winkle. He was the NSCA Certified Personal Trainer of the Year, 2012, and I think 2010 as well. And I asked him about the NSCA cert, and he said that really all you need is the manual. So I got the manual, which is the latest version, the second edition, and the practice exams, which consist of booklets and video. One of the big differences between this, the NSCA, and something like ACE is that the NSCA has a video portion to start, where essentially they'll show you a video of somebody doing an exercise, a trainer administering some kind of test, or some kind of muscle movement, and they'll ask you to identify, critique, or explain what's going on in the video. So there is a visual portion. It's not just read a question, give an answer. It's also assessing, something that you see on video. Okay, what's wrong with this? What's right with this? What are they testing here or there? But a lot of you are worried very much about the testing itself. I'll get into that after I go into the numbers. Let's stay in order. So in terms of the investment, the NSCA exam is not that expensive from soup to nuts, and I'm talking about study material to taking the exam. All right. The first thing that I did was I became a member of the NSCA, and they have different types of memberships: associate member, professional member. I did the professional membership, which was $120 a month. And essentially that just puts you on the job board, that gives you access to webinars, that gives you access to discounts on study material, things of that nature. And I essentially crunched the numbers. So I only got the manual and the practice exam. The manual cost $94. I saved $2 on this for being a member. For the practice exams, I got all three. I paid $85 for this as opposed to $185, so I saved $100 on this. And to actually sit for the exam, it cost me $285. Whereas if I was a non-member, it would have cost me $420. Now, in a previous review for the ACE, or for any cert, I said if you can find the manual online, you know, like on Amazon, go on Amazon, you can probably get it for like half of what's being charged on the website. But when I crunched the numbers, essentially, this would have been $50. If I was a non-member, this would have been $50. This would have been still $185. And to sit for the exam would have cost me $420. So, long story short, becoming a member for $120 and then getting this through the ACE site, getting the practice exams through the ACE site, because you never know if you get this used, if it's all marked up. I invested a total of about $586. Whereas if I was a non-member and purchased the book, the practice exams, and sat for the exam, I would have spent a total of $655. And that excludes me from the benefits of the discounts for the books later on, or for the webinars, or for the job board, or for the discounts on their conferences that they have. So, I mean, all in all, am I upset? No, I think I spent less on this certification in total than I did for the ACE. Whereas with the ACE, I still feel I spent a little bit too much. I told you, really all you need is a manual. And with this, I think the manual and the study material is going to be just fine. Now, let's talk about the process of reading through this, reading through the manual. Now, I essentially, you have to understand, I have a little bit more experience in training than you might have if you've never sat for an exam. So I just said that, all right, I'll read a chapter a day. Some days I split chapters into two because they were a little bit longer, and obviously I tore my Achilles shortly after I started. So I'd read through the first couple chapters, tore my Achilles, kind of put this on the shelf for a while I healed, and then got back to reading. So there was a big gap between like the first 8 chapters and the last 17 chapters. But essentially, I just read a chapter a day, and then went to the study material, went to the exam questions at the end of each chapter at the end. After reading the entire booklet, that's when I went over to the practice exam, took the practice exams a couple times, and then I sat for the exam, which I passed. I only had to take it once. Quick benefit to the NSCA certification. You have to understand that I think only like 60% of the people that take the exam actually pass. I think the numbers are higher for other certifications. But that is actually going to work in your favor because it's a more highly regarded cert rather. Like for instance, I would take somebody that had an NSCA cert a little bit more seriously than somebody that, no offense to ISSA, I'm just saying it's a little bit easier than an ISSA cert. And it's not, these exams are not that hard. I think too often everybody's worried about what's going to be on the exam. So allow me to allay some of your concerns about the content of the exam. And this is going to be true, I believe, for every cert that I take. I'm probably only going to do one more CPT cert, which will be the NASM, and that'll be it, because they're so similar, it's almost mind-numbing. I almost feel I'll be wasting time reading through the NASM manual because it'll probably test the same way, but I'll order the books and then I'll read them just for your own benefit, and so I can give you the best advice possible. But for the NSCA, I will tell you, I started to read the book and I immediately got very, very intimidated. All right, the first 8 or 9 chapters, depending on how much you like nutrition, are going to be a little bit frustrating for you, especially if you don't have much background in the area of kinesiology or anatomy. If it's been a while since, if you're out of school, you may just start to read the book and go like, "There's no way, I'm not going to remember any of this stuff." And that's how I felt, especially after reading the first chapter, which went into anatomy and physiology. So the first 8 or 9 chapters, it's going to go into anatomy, physiology, kinesiology, physiological adaptations to exercise, bioenergetics, biomechanics, and these are chapters. For the first 8 or 9 chapters, you're really going to have to power through this booklet, all right? And I'm not going to say that the information is not important, because it is important, and I actually found it very interesting. But by and large, you're not going to be tested a lot on bioenergetics or biomechanics. If I recall 2 questions out of the 150 on bioenergetics or biomechanics, that'd be a lot. So these are not things that they necessarily test on, but they're important for you to understand or get a basic understanding of how muscles work. And when clients ask you questions about things that are a little bit beyond just, well, what does a leg extension do? You can actually give them some information. You know, this, I think, is a very good manual. This isn't just a textbook that you read. This is something that you're going to go back and you're going to go over for a different client every time. Especially toward the end, where they talk about training people with cerebral palsy, or training people with low back pain, training people with training the elderly. I think this book, as opposed to ACE, the previous edition, so I haven't read the newest ACE edition, but the previous edition that I studied for the exam, I think this book is very thorough. It's a little bit more thorough in terms of what kind of clients you're going to run into and how to train them, what to look out for. All right, so this is something I'm always going to go back to if I were to come into a client and say, okay, you have this and this issue. Maybe I should go back to my NSCA book, see what they say about that, and then for our second consultation, I'll say, well, this is what I can do for you. There's some overarching things that are always going to apply to people when it comes to training. The difference between body fat measurements in this book versus difference in body fat measurements and ACE is non-existent. You test the same way when you're taking a skin fold measurement for the tricep. All right, taking blood pressure in this book is the same as taking blood pressure in ACE. It's just the extra things that they put in. So when it comes to studying for the exam, my advice, you're going to have to power through those first 8 chapters. Even if you don't feel like you're grasping everything, read through them. All right, just go word for word. Take the exam at the end of the chapter. Go back, see what you don't know, see why you don't know it. The main things that you're going to have to remember anyway are going to be the things in the little the notes, rather, in the little purple boxes. So make sure to take note of whatever you see in the purple boxes, especially for those first 8 chapters. If you're going to see them on the exam, those are kinds of questions you're going to see. All right. After that, I think the manual becomes a much easier read as it goes into types of training. It spends a lot of time on form, in terms of testing, in terms of the psychology of training, and then in the back end, the legal issues, of course, and dealing with specific clients, with specific ailments that will pose a challenge in terms of training. So I will say for the exam, you have to know, just about everything. Those first 8 chapters, you may see 2 or 3 questions about it, so you shouldn't fret so much that you can't, understand every single layer of every muscle and what bone fits into this bone. It's really not going to be that way. Exams for personal training are largely going to be scenario based. So it'll be something like, Mary is 45 years old, she's 135 pounds, she has a blood pressure of 120 over 80, she's never exercised before. What kind of program are you going to put her on? That, by and large, is going to be a lot of the questions that you see. However, Mary will have a couple of risk factors. Mary might be a smoker. Mary might have a BMI of like 35, and you have to know, is she overweight or is she at risk? She may have heart disease in her family. You have to see if that's a risk factor. She may have an injury, such as a shoulder impingement. So what exercises do you need to stay away from? And I think the book does a pretty good job of explaining, things that you want to, things that will help you to pass the exam, essentially. All right. Another thing that you want to take note of when you're reading this is when they go over exercises, don't just skip through all of them. They have like a strength exercise portion where they talk about the strength exercise you should be doing for your legs and for your arms and such. It's a very short chapter. At the end, it goes through all of the exercises and all the form. I didn't read through all of it because I knew a lot of that already. But for somebody that doesn't know form well, the exam may trick you, all right, for lack of a better word, in terms of like body positioning, grip, how you're supposed to hold a bar, open grip, closed grip. These are things that can cause injury. So anything that can cause injury or cause pain to your client if you're negligent about it, it's going to be on the exam. Things that can happen while you're training, while you're assessing your client. So in terms of what you want to know for this exam, it's really going to be about the consultation area, and that's where you collect information for testing in terms of cardiovascular testing, body fat testing, medical history, and then from there assessing based on what you know about the client, what kind of program is good for them, and how to progress them on in each program. And this book is going to do a very good job to prepare you. You just have to read each chapter. All right, you're going to have to read it. There's no way, even me with the information that I had in the ACE manual, if I had just tried to take the NSCA based on that, I probably might not have passed, because there are other things that the NSCA goes over that some other certs don't go over, especially in terms of the training, the non-gym training, the non-weights training. So if you're talking about walking training, running form, plyometrics, these are areas that are covered in the NSCA book that are not covered in the ACE manual. All right, so these are things that you're going to have to know: running form, walking form, speed walking form, plyometric form. You will get we will see a lot of questions on plyometrics. So once you get, and that's jumping exercises. Once you get to that portion of the book, make sure to spend a lot of attention on the plyometrics. So essentially, I read through the entire book. All right, whatever holes you've left, be wise at the end of each chapter. Study go over the study questions and answer them. And then after you finish the entire book, then go back to chapter 1's practice exam or chapter exams, retake them, make sure that you know everything. Then take this, then take the practice exam. You actually may want to read through, without trying to answer it, you may want to read through the first volume of the practice exam, because once you see the type of questions that they ask, the way that they ask questions, I think it'll allay a lot of your concern in terms of what did I just read about, about the body or about these muscles. Man, I'm going to have to know every muscle for the exam, because when I get questions on Facebook, a lot of the questions are, oh, Jonathan, how much am I going to have to know about biomechanics? Or Jonathan, how much am I going to have to know about the muscles? Where can I get, a chart like this where I can find every muscle or every bone in the body for the exam? And you're not going to be tested on that. You're going to be tested on, this is your client, how do you train them? How do you keep them safe? And that's the basis of all certifications. And if you do that, you'll have no problem. Don't skip over the gym planning and the gym safety chapters. You will see things on that as well. So questions like, how far apart should two machines be in your client's home, in your client's home gym? These are things that you're going to have to know. How high are the mirrors supposed to be off the floor? I think it's like 18 inches. And also liability in terms of negligence. Get whatever can get you sued or fired, they will test on. All right. So make sure that just read the book. Read everything in the book. You shouldn't have an issue. In terms of the computer-based exam, it's 150 questions, no different than any cert I think I'm going to end up taking for you guys. Always make sure to, I always walk out halfway through and just clear my mind. I just go to the bathroom, I clear my mind, and because I just don't like sitting down in front of a computer for for long stretches of time. My mind starts to get boggled. But if you have a question that you have an issue with, just relax for a little bit, get back in front of the computer. It'll usually come to you later on in the exam, because everything kind of like ties in to itself. And when you write an exam that's 150 questions long, you're inevitably going to answer a question later on in your exam. All right. So for instance, if you're asking a question on, I don't know, what muscle does the bicep curl work? All right. If you didn't know the answer was biceps, later on they'll ask a question something like, well, since your biceps are working in the bicep curl, and you go, oh, well, that's the answer to that question. It's not going to be as overly easy as that. But sometimes questions later on in an exam will cancel out answers that you're not sure of for a previous question. So always try to power through the entire exam and then go back if you need to. Don't fret. If you really only need a 70, like this is not like grade school where you need to get an A or a B. There's no difference between a 70 and a 90 in terms of getting the cert. Now, in terms of being prepared, I definitely recommend that if you pass by the skin of your teeth, you make sure to always reference back to your manual. But I don't think you'll have any problem as long as you read through it. The main thing that I think people do wrong for these exams is they overstudy. They try to learn every VO2 max test. You're not required to remember anything that you would have to go back to reference. Like if I wanted to check if this client's performance in a walking test, compared to everybody else in their age group, they don't expect you to remember that entire chart. They're just going to want to know, is this test appropriate for this client? All right. And in terms of what else would you want to know? In terms of math, I always get a lot of questions. Jonathan, is there a lot of math in the exam? Between the NSCA, between the ACE, the only math questions that I saw were BMI, calculating BMI. All right, weight divided by height. That's it. Or calculating fat weight based on somebody's weight and body fat. So somebody is 100 pounds. They have 25% body fat. How many pounds of fat? How many pounds of muscle they have? A question like that. I was a little bit surprised that the numbers weren't as round with the NSCA exam as they were for the ACE. So the ACE would have asked something like, somebody weighs 100 pounds, they have 25% body fat, what's the answer? Just so that they understand that you know what the calculations were. NSCA was a little bit more diabolical, where they would say something like, this person weighs 132 pounds with 36% body fat, and now they're 117 pounds with 25% body fat. How much fat did they lose over the course of their time? That's the kind of question that you'll see. And when you go through these sections, you'll have they'll go over how to answer that. But in terms of testing, as long as you understand how to take blood pressure, as long as you understand the sites of your body fat, caliper methods, and as long as you understand your BMI, that's probably the only math. The only other math that I prepared for was calculating somebody's calories, and that question never really came up in the exam anyway. So it's really like, don't make the exam so hard. You don't need to know every overall detail. If you can, this is the advice that Robert gave me, and this is the advice I'm going to give to you. If you can answer all of the questions, all the end of the chapter questions in the manual, and you can go over and find your mistakes with the practice exams, you're going to be okay. I took it a step further, and I went to test.com, the same thing that I went to with the ACE exam, and I took their exam, only because I like to practice taking, a computer exam, and they ask a lot of scenario questions as well. So even though I feel a lot of the questions that I saw on test.com didn't come around in the NSCA exam, just the act of taking an exam, on a computer, I think will help you. So, so that's about it in terms of the NSCA exam. If you're looking for a certified personal trainer exam, you're looking for the NSCA-CPT. All right, you're not looking for the CSCS. That's for training athletes. That's for training. That's specifically training athletes. Like if you were training, college athletes, college football team, college basketball team, sports team, things like that. So I'm not sure what I'll do next. If I'll do the NSCA, the NASM exam, just because a lot of people ask about NASM, or just jump right into the CSCS exam because I already have the manual. But I'll keep you abreast of new certifications. Or current certifications and how to pass them. Main thing, read through the book, don't overstudy, don't focus so much on the first 8 chapters for passing the exam. Read that stuff for your own benefit, but if you're making flashcards for chapter 1, you're going to drive yourself insane. And then you'll see one question or less on the exam, and you'll have wasted all that energy on, reading slide and filament theory. Not necessary. So, I hope you found this helpful. If I left any holes in this certification review, obviously feel free to respond back in a comment. ask me on the Facebook page or ask me on the YouTube page. I've been out for a while. A lot of it has been rehabbing, so I can actually walk with the torn Achilles, but I'm feeling about 80%. So I'll go back to making videos a little bit more often. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, comment below. Thank you for your support. Subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all soon.